Hi there, Scott Lingle, one of the co-founders of Adventure Genie. Let's spend the next few minutes taking a tour through the world's first artificial intelligence-based trip planner that's targeted at the RVer. So when we plan our trips with Adventure Genie and pretty much any other way, we generally go through three phases. The first one is we shape our trip with a series of stops, either created by you, the user, or by Adventure Genie as recommendations. The second is you choose places to stay. Typically, those are campgrounds. And then we help you to find really cool things to do at each of the stops. So you shape your trip, you find places to stay, and then you pick things to do. So we provide you with several ways to shape your trip in Adventure Genie. The first one is through something that we call our Genie trips, and it's a curated set of dozens of trips that are specifically targeted at the RVer with things that we know that you like to do and places to stay. So, for instance, let's take a look at, I don't know, the national parks across the US. And you could see that you can get an overview of several different itineraries that are based on national parks in a particular area of the US. So we're just browsing through them and we see, ooh, what about this one? Meandering the Mighty Five National Parks of Utah. I heard that's a pretty good, cool trip, has some great national parks, but generally I wouldn't know which national parks to go to, in what order, how long to stay without doing a bunch of other research. But with Adventure Genie, we give you a Genie trip that's already curated that gives you that information. You could browse through the trip, you could look at a quick little map of it, you could go into each one of the stops, for instance, Zion National Park, and we make specific recommendations for you. They're hyperlinked. You can go and do additional research all through the power of Adventure Genie. Let's suppose this is a trip that you think you'd like to take. It's as simple as clicking take this trip. Of course, you can enter some start and end locations and distances, but let's just use the default for now and go ahead and take this trip. First thing we do is you could see over on the left-hand pane here is we have automatically added all of your stops. Remember, you use that to shape your trip. On the right-hand side, you can see a map view, which we're going to get into in many other parts of the demo. So, but users might say, hey, I have a pretty good idea of a trip that I'd like to take. I at least know some of the locations. I don't know all of them, but let's go ahead. For instance, when we take a trip here from the low country of South Carolina, we typically start in I can't type it, but Bluffton, South Carolina. And then we know that a good next stop for us would be Asheville, North Carolina. And let's go ahead and add that to our trip. And we know that we have a couple of other stops that we might want to take. For instance, Nashville, Tennessee is one of our favorite locations as well. Let's put that in there. And then we know we want to go out to somewhere in South Dakota, and we heard about this great national park known as the Badlands. What a cool name for the Badlands. And we picked the Badlands National Park. But that's all we know, and that's all we've entered. We said we want to start from Bluffton, we go to Asheville to Nashville, and then Badlands National Park. And we don't know any of the places along the way to stop, but that's where we're going to use the magic of AI and Adventure Genie. And so you can see on our trip over here that we've created a trip that includes Bluffton, Asheville, Nashville, and Badlands National Park, but you can see that we've also made some recommendations along the way. And these recommendations are taking into account how far the RVer likes to travel on any particular day. And for us, we know it's about 300 miles, and where we might find a good concentration of campgrounds on a route to get to our destination. So we didn't need to use any other tools. We didn't need to go into Google Maps. We didn't need to do any calculations to find out how far we can go in a particular day. Adventure Genie automatically made those recommendations. You can see these with the orange pin recommendations there. Now, for us, we know that we can get from Bluffton to Asheville in one day. It's a little bit more than our 300 miles, so we can go ahead and get rid of this recommendation here. And that's what the user does. The user goes through and adds stops, removes stops, allows Adventure Genie to make recommendations. We as a user, we might say, oh yeah, Mount Vernon, Illinois, that looks like a great place. Let's go ahead and add that to a trip. And the next thing the user would typically do after they shape their trip is identify places to stay. And again, that's typically a campground. So let's go ahead and dive into Nashville, Tennessee, and let's see what kind of campgrounds crop up over there. So you can see within a radius, we have a set of campgrounds. The ones that are highlighted here in the darker color are ones that best meet my preferences. And we already had some filters that were automatically selected by Adventure Genie because we know for this particular user, which is me, the things that we must have in a campground, the things that we'd like to have, and the things we don't even care about. So we automatically select some filters and hone in on some campgrounds that will be an appropriate fit for me. We're really customizing it to the particular user. So let's go ahead and sort those campgrounds by what we like to do is Genie Score. Genie Score is an independent rating that we came up with through our artificial intelligence in Adventure Genie that rates a campground from 1 to 100. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's go ahead and look at some of the campgrounds here. I see one, the Elm Hill RV Resort. That looks like an interesting campground not far out of Nashville. I've heard about that. So let's go and drill into it and see what we have to say about the Elm Hill RV Resort. The first thing you could see is that we come up with a Genie summary. It's just a simple paragraph. This campground is a great place to stay for a quick getaway. Located just a couple of minutes south of I-40, it is an easy and quick 20-minute drive into downtown Nashville. So the thing to understand about the Genie summary is you're not going to find this summary anywhere else on the internet. It's proprietary to Adventure Genie. And we come up with this campground summary, this Genie summary, based on everything that we've learned about this campground by scouring the internet, as well as what people are saying about this campground. And we effectively read all the underlying reviews that we could find on a campground so you don't have to, because we know that's what you typically do. You go in and you find a campground and then you have to read a whole bunch of reviews and then sort through it, try and make sense of it. We do that for you through artificial intelligence. We understand the underlying sentiment for a particular campground, and that's what we summarize for you here in a completely independent way. That's the Genie summary. The next thing you want to take a look at is the Genie score. Remember, we already showed you when we were sorting and searching the campgrounds that we sorted it by the Genie score. And this particular campground had a rating of 83, 1 to 100. We came up with an 83. And the next really interesting thing is what we call the Genie match. What's the Genie match? A Genie match is where it really customizes it for you. With Genie score, the Elm Hill RV Resort is going to show up with an 83 score for every user of Adventure Genie. The Genie match is with what percent likelihood do we believe that this particular campground will be a match for me? And we're predicting with a 96% likelihood that the Elm Hill RV Resort will be a great match for Scott and Lisa. We know that to be true because we've stayed at the Elm Hill RV Resort and we absolutely love it. So what's one of the next things we might want to do? Well, what a user often does as they're planning a trip and they're searching and sorting and finding their campgrounds is they'll then go into a mapping tool. For instance, they might go to Google Maps and see where does it sit relative to the highway, what's around it, what does it look like. Well, we have that built right into Adventure Genie. You don't need to leave the tool at all. And we can go and take a look at this particular campground, Elm Hill RV Resort. We see that it's on a nice lake over here. That's pretty cool. We could zoom into it even further and we could take a peek at how the campground is laid out. Even with a 3D view, we can see that there are nice concrete pads. There's lots of space, trees around the outskirts, but not overhanging the sites themselves, which is what a lot of people are looking for. So we think that's pretty cool, and nobody else is doing that. If we go back to the overall information for the campground, the next thing that a user might want to do is make a reservation. So how do we do that in Adventure Genie? What we do is we expose the best possible way to make a reservation. It might be like this particular campground where you can just click on a link and we bring you right to the tool that allows you to make a reservation for this particular campground. That's great for the Elm Hill RV Resort. Not all do that. Some of them you have to send an email, some of them you have to make a phone call, and we will expose that information to the user. Again, the best possible way to make a reservation for a campground. We show you, we bring you directly there so you don't have to do the research. Okay, so let's say we like the Elm Hill RV Resort. we add it to our trip, we go back into the trip planner, and we can see now as we scroll down on the left-hand side that for Nashville, Tennessee, we've added the Elm Hill RV Resort. Of course, we could start adding some dates on when we're going to stay there and put that into a calendar, and we can also provide you with an overall calendar view for a particular trip. Okay, so now we started to shape our trip. And remember, this is the second way that we've shown you how to shape your trip. The first way was through a Genie trip for those curated trips. The second way is doing it stop by stop. I got another one up my sleeve that I'm going to show you in a moment. But before we get there, we've now shaped this trip. We started to select some campgrounds. What are you going to do at each one of these locations? Well, with our Genie wishes, we provide an innovative way to help you to find cool things to do. So, for instance, for me and Lisa, we like to go biking and do some photography. And I don't know, we're taking a trip across the country. Maybe we can eat some local barbecue. And we go ahead and generate your Genie wishes. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we came up with. Well, we were starting in Bluffton, South Carolina. It said, hey, how about you go for a bike ride on the Palmetto Bluff Conservancy Trail? Happen to know that trail. It's really cool. We love it. Sounds like a good recommendation. Try some barbecue at Bluffton Barbecue. Okay, that's pretty good too. We scroll down and get to Nashville, Tennessee, and it gives us some recommendations to go biking at the Shelby Bottoms Greenway, visit the Country Music Hall of Fame, some great barbecue recommendations, a couple of great barbecue recommendations. Okay, we like it. Let's go back to our trip. So remember, we're back in our trip view where we have our stops and our stay is shown on the left. What we've now added is into the notes for the trip, we've automatically added these Genie wishes that we created with AI, remember, and we're starting to further flesh out your itinerary for you. So you continue on shaping your trip, adding places to stay, and identifying things to do with your Genie wishes. We then provide a way to export the trip in multiple manners. We could either, for those that really want to geek out on it, they can export it into Excel and then get down to a fine level of granularity on how they want to manage their trip. We could export it to a GPS so that you could import it into a device like a Garmin. We can print your trip, and what we do here is we export it into a PDF. If you're traditional, you could print it, bring it along with you. You could keep it electronically, look at it on your phone or on any other device, including a tablet or a laptop. And I do want to remind you that Adventure Genie runs on virtually any device, a laptop, a tablet, or a mobile device such as a phone. So far, what have we done? We've shown you a couple of ways to shape your trip. The first one was with the Genie trips. The second was stop by stop, and some ways to identify places to stay and things to do. I'm going to show you one more thing, which is our most advanced feature of Adventure Genie. It's still a little bit experimental. It's going to get better over time. The more you use it, the better it's going to get. And this is where we're going to roll the dice. And we're going to take what we call a Genie journey. So this is where you're taking a trip. You don't really have a great idea of the stops along the way. You want the most advice, the most recommendations possible. So for instance, let's suppose we were going to take a 3-week trip to the beach towns from Virginia to Key West. So again, this is our most advanced feature. This uses our most complex algorithms. This will take just a moment or two for us to sort it out. But this is where you're just kind of like, I'm not really sure how to do it. But look what we came up with here. So we recommended a trip that starts in Virginia Beach, Virginia, goes to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, onto Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We knew that for this particular user, going from the Outer Banks of North Carolina down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is going to be too far. So we recommended a Genie stop along the way in Stella, North Carolina. After Myrtle Beach, we suggest Charleston, Savannah, Jacksonville, Daytona, Cocoa Beach, Florida, West Palm Beach, Miami Beach, Key Largo, and Key West. That sounds like a pretty good trip to me. That would have taken a ton of time for us to research and sketch that out on our own. But wait, we're not done. Let's go ahead and say on this particular trip, let's say we wanted to do some biking and eat local seafood and let our Genie wishes get generated automatically. And here we go at Virginia Beach. How about you rent a bike and ride the boardwalk along the beach, visit the aquarium, and try the local seafood at Waterman's Surfside Grill all the way on through. In Savannah, we suggest try some local seafood at the old Pink House. We've been there. We like it. It's a good recommendation, and we just continue on building that trip automatically through the power of AI. We hope you love it. Give it a try.